we're just so grateful that we think, Kevin, your feeling is the way a lot of people felt, that to have John as a guest during their Christmas and their holiday season was a throwback to all the good memories that they had of hearing John Sunday after Sunday and everything that he evoked. We put out 38 interview requests, Kevin, for this documentary. I don't think I'll ever be a part of a project where all 38 folks say yes. As busy as everybody is, as packed as everyone's schedule is, everybody made time to talk about John Madden. And as obvious as this may sound, I think with Joel Santos, a fabulous co-director I worked with on this, and our entire team learned, was just the depth of love for John Madden.
What do you think John was most proud of as far as his football life?
There is no question on that, Nick, and it's great to see you and hear you. And that was that John viewed himself always as two things above everything else: a teacher and a coach. And what it meant to him to ultimately get into the Hall of Fame, not as a broadcaster, but as a coach, the guy who is still the winningest coach in Raiders history, the guy who still has the highest winning percentage of anybody with 100 wins or more. There's so many people, Nick, who play the game, a younger generation, who didn't even know he was a real person, let alone that he was a towering figure as a coach. Those rough and tumble Raiders teams that played with such grit and edge and toughness. And that's what John tried to invoke as such a young coach. That's what he was most proud of, and his ability to teach in the broadcast booth, through the video game, and when he was on the sideline.
Tom, you mentioned, him coaching the Raiders, and that team has so many personalities. Ken Stabler, Fred Biletnikoff, Lester Hayes, Jack Tatum. We could go on and on. What was it about John that enabled him to really get through to all those guys and bring them together to become, the great team that they were?
I think because John just, as Roger Goodell said, Chris, was football. He loved every aspect of it. And he was the same guy every day, all the time, completely authentic. And he only had 3 rules. This has become sort of famously associated with John now. The reason he only had 3 rules: show up, be on time, pay attention. And when I ask you to play hard, is because the more rules you had, the more opportunity players had to break them. I see when you see him lifted, the incredible joy on his players' faces and on John's face when they finally break through and win that Super Bowl, Super Bowl 11. I think you could tell how connected he is. Remember, he was so young, 32 years old. That was unheard of at the time when Al Davis tabbed him to be the head coach. And he was fantastic. But he achieved what he wanted to. The losses ate him up from the inside out. And ultimately, he made an incredible transition to continue to contribute to the sport.
Well, and I don't know if people know this, but I don't know if it's fair to say he invented telestration, but he certainly what popularized it. And
he did.
And that, to me, there are certain parts of watching football that, and I know I'm the youngest guy on the show currently, but for the job, I had to watch, you have to study, you have to watch older stuff. And so, in certain parts of watching football from just not that long ago, it's so much harder to follow. You don't have the down and distance on your screen. You don't have the first down line on your screen. And you don't have guys showing you what really happened. John made that not only popular, but made it accessible to people who had never coached and had never played. Can you give us a little background on how that came about and how it worked so, in my memory, seamlessly, even though I'm sure in the beginning it wasn't, to where it became a staple of every football broadcast now we see?
Let me back you up, Nick, just to say what the origin really did and how much that led to. No one had ever had a production meeting before John Madden. Nobody met with the players or the coaches before the game before John Madden. Nobody went to practice as a broadcast crew before John Madden. So in these production meetings, he would get up and he would draw on whiteboards or chalkboards, and then suddenly he sort of presented to the different producers that he was with and crews, what if I actually had the ability to do this on air? The technology was invented. Initially, Nick, it was considered a union job. John had to be grandfathered into the union to allow him to draw on the screen. And it took off. The other thing, Nick, which I think is remarkable, is no one paid attention to the lineman until John, who was a lineman, who understood trenches and understood pulls and tackle play, all those things. And with that came this entirely new door which opened to helping people understand it's not just follow the ball and see the specialists. It's the entire play design.
Tom, I also believe it was Madden's idea for the yellow line for the first down, right? That was his idea in the Fox production, which is, I was saying to my dad as we were watching games on Christmas Day, it's hard to believe that we once watched football without that yellow line there to tell you where the first down was. But let me go to the Madden game, because obviously so many younger people remember him for that. And Nick has talked about this. Like, you can draw a direct line from the Madden game to a lot of the analytics. And what did John, as an old school football guy, what did he think about the analytics and the way that's kind of maybe taken over the NFL to some degree? What was his view of analytics and the way it's used in today's game?
You know, John, who passed yesterday at 85, was not locked in some older version. Yes, he worshiped toughness, but he also understood player safety had to be paramount. He was on the safety panel. Goodell consulted him about player safety issues, as well as being on part of the competition committee through the coaches subcommittee. He wanted the game to evolve and get better. To go back to the game, Chris, two quick things. The cable cam that you see that gives you those incredible angles, that mirrors the video game, which is remarkable. So the video game has influenced the way you watch. The other thing to think about when it comes to John and the video game, talking to Patrick Mahomes, who loved baseball and was a great baseball player as well as football, said he found himself gravitating more toward football the more often he played the Madden game, because it helped him understand the entire field and how to manage the quarterback position. And he could play it when he was off the field all the time. Lamar Jackson, not an emotional guy by his description, cried when he was put on the cover of Madden. His influence is remarkable, not just within the NFL, but into pop culture, hosting SNL, all the ads that he did, etc.
Yep.
He just is a truly beloved, iconic figure.
I want to stay on the video game for just a moment because there's so much to it. And I think Jimmy Traina tweeted this out yesterday, so credit to him. I didn't know this, that when they first were creating the original version, they came to him and they said, hey, we're going to do this football game, but we can only do 6-on-6, maybe 7-on-7, because they didn't have the technology for 11-on-11. And John said, reportedly, well, you have fun with that, but you're not putting my name on it. Like, if you're going to put my name on it, it's going to be a teaching tool that can only work if there's 11, if it's true football. But I really do believe there is a generation of people, my age and younger, maybe a little older than me, that learned clock management and the minutiae of football through the game. I know I did. I know that I watched football my whole childhood, but I learned, I need to be in dime if he has 4 receivers out there by getting my head handed to me in Madden by being in base and just guys are running free. I know he wasn't the soundtrack of the game the last few years, but was he still acutely aware that I think there are NFL coaches, forget the players, coaches that learned part of their, coaching history, if you will, when they were in 7th grade playing on PlayStation.
Well, John's spirit is smiling, Nick, having heard everything you said, particularly about what you learned, because that was his goal. And that anecdote the trainer wrote about is 100% true. 7-on-7, 8-on-8 were the limitations of the technology at the time that Trip Hawkins, one of the founders of EA, had come to John with, and he outright rejected it, saying, if it's not 11-on-11, it's not football, and I'm not going to be a part of it, pushing back, which delayed the launch of the game, Nick, by several years. But to get it right through John's insistence, look ultimately at what that led to. I also wanted to let folks know who are watching and listening, We're so grateful that John had the opportunity on Christmas Day with his family in the den at his home to watch this and to take it in and hear, put together everything that people felt and thought about him. The fact that he received his flowers that day. And when it was over, he went around the room, pure teacher coach style. He asked everybody what they thought, what their favorite part was. And when Mike, his son, asked him, "Well, Dad, finally, what did you think?" He just smiled and said, "I thought it was great." What that meant to us and putting it together, we can't ever really convey. It just means the world.
Tom, that was just excellent. The documentary airs tonight on FS1, also has an airing on Big Fox. Tom, thanks for spending some time with us and sharing your memories. Before we go,
Happy New Year, guys.
Tom.
Thank
So
you.
great to have you on the team, man.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you, Tom.
Happy holidays, man.
Fantastic. And before we go, we want to talk about the legacy that Madden had on players, one of them being our own Michael Vick. Michael Vick tweeted this: "Before I went into broadcasting with Fox Sports, Coach Andy Reid asked me to speak with John Madden. Mr. Madden's advice to me was to just be myself. His words gave me the confidence to pursue this new career path. I thank Andy for suggesting and Mr. Madden for accepting my call." It goes on. "It was an honor to be in his presence, whether in football production meetings or on a phone call. He was a true trailblazer and will be missed dearly. R.I.P. to a legend." We'll be right back.
Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from First Things First, or go watch a few segments from our other shows on FS1.